Hello, and welcome to another battle report. Um, we decided on Thanksgiving Day to play a game of Warhammer. Now, it's just me and my wife for the most part. Much of our um, extended friends and family are pretty, they're kind of all over the country, so we didn't have any opportunity to really be with anyone else, which is fine by us. We were happy to play a game. So that's what we did. It was a lot of fun, as always, I guess. So I decided to use the Slaanesh Demons because I hadn't played that army yet, and my wife wanted to use vampire counts, so that's what we decided to do. And this time we decided to play a scenario, and it was the Watchtower scenario. I think we're going to play through the ones in the book. Just go through them all, try them out. I played probably a number of games in between the last battle report, but this is the first one I actually took pictures of because I'm trying to paint, trying to use armies that are fully painted as opposed to a bunch of gray plastic. So, yeah, it was really fun to see the whole army deployed for the first time on my beautiful demons. Um, and that was awesome to see. And the vampire counts were the defender in this scenario, and so they took control of the watchtower first with 20 graveguard and a keen in there as well. And the objective is to control the tower by the end of the game. Now, the game could end randomly beginning or at the end of turn 3. So then the defender opts to go first or second, and she decided to take the first turn. So the vampire counts moved onto the field, and they can only move on a few inches, whereas my army deploys up to 12 inches on. So I'm pretty close to the tower, and she's pretty far away still. Now, because it counts as her movement to come on, we're not sure. I was arguing that she didn't get a hero phase, and she wasn't too impressed with that, as you can see in these pictures. But so I don't know if that's the case, if anyone else plays it that way, but that's the way we played it. So the vampire counts just pretty much moved on. There's no ranged attacks or anything like that. So we went straight over to my side on the demons, and so we go straight into the next turn. And on the turn for the demons, let's see here. The Keeper's Secrets use the excess of violence on a unit of demonettes. That's their command ability. It allows them to pile in and attack twice, which is really good. A lot of the other forces I held in reserve. I didn't really move them forward, although I did move up. The Herald of Slaanesh, a unit of demonettes, and the Exalted Seeker Chariot to assault the tower. And so we moved up and charged, and they all got in. No problem there. They're pretty close. And we weren't really sure how to resolve attacks on the part of the graveguard in the tower, because the models aren't actually on the tower in this case. I guess if you had a large enough one, they would be. So what we did is we divided the tower into components, and we would say that X number of graveguard would be on the east side, on the west side, on the north side, and the south side. Um, I'm not really sure how that really works because the Grave Guard only have like a 1 inch attack. So if all my models are on the east and west or something, would you only get like a maximum of maybe a, a 10 models to fight, or and how do characters work and stuff like that? So we weren't really sure. That's how we kind of decided to have the attacks divided up. So 5 of the Grey Guard could attack the Herald, another 5 could attack the Demonettes, and another 5 could attack the Exalted Chariot. And the undead, the Vampire Count's king could then attack anything he wanted. So that's how we decided to do it. And the Herald Slaanesh was wounded 3 times. Let's see here. But altogether, with all the other units combined and the command ability, about 3/4 of the Grave Guard were killed off in a round of combat. Now, the Exalted Chariot adds 1 onto the Battle Shock test. And the Demonettes have an ability that if your opponent rolls a 1 on their Battle Shock test, you make them re-roll it. So they're pretty bad for Battle Shock. Both the Demons and Vampire Counts have their braveries at 10. But a number of instances in this game, a bunch of units ran because they got mauled pretty badly. So the Grave Guard were wiped out. Which is nice. I did lose a couple Demonettes, so they took a Battle Shock test, but they rolled a 1, and when Demonettes roll 1 on a Battle Shock, you get a random amount of Demonettes back into the unit, which is a nice little ability. It actually happened a couple times in this game, even though it's a pretty rare occurrence. So the only thing left was the White King, and that's it. And then so the Vampire Counts went after that. And so on the Vampire Counts turn, the Necromancer cast Dance Macabre on the Black Knights, and the Vampire Lord used her command ability at the double, which is specific to this mission or scenario. That allows them to run and charge in the same turn for the general and any unit within 12 inches. The attacker also has a specific command ability, but it has to do with rolling above the enemy's bravery, and because everyone's 10, that's just not likely. So I never really used it. So most of the Vampire Counts, the entire army moved forward. They were all pretty close to charge range. Unfortunately, they didn't do it. So, which is, it's always good when that happens. So the only thing left to do in close combat was the Vampire King in the tower there, the Vampire Count's King. And so he attacked the Herald, because the Herald only had 2 wounds left, and he was hoping to do it. And he hit on 3s, but he missed with all his dice, which is, so whenever that happens, it's always kind of a good laugh. My wife wasn't as impressed as I was. So then we went back to my turn with the Slaanesh Demons, and again I used Excess of Violence on a different unit of Demonettes. And so that last combat, the between like the Chariot and the Herald and the Demonettes, the last remaining model in the tower was killed, and so I moved in a unit of Demonettes to occupy the tower. And I put Mystic Shield on them, so they're pretty well protected in there. And then the rest of the army moved up to confront the coming horde of Vampire Counts. And yeah, I mean, it was a pretty kind of brutal combat. Everything really managed to get into close combat. The Fiends and the Mask special character They charged into the Black Knights. The Exalted Chariot was only like 3 inches away. Of course, it rolled a 2, so it didn't get in. Everything else, though, got in. Yeah, so I had a bunch of a cavalry on the right. They charged into the Mortis engine, and together with the other chariot I had as well. So kind of a brutal one. The Demonettes are great. They don't have a lot of armor, so they're not too resilient. But those things can kill. They get a ton of attacks, and they have a mechanism where they can gain extra attacks if you roll. Normally, if you roll a 6 on the dice, you'll get an extra attack. If the unit has 20 or more models, then that becomes a 5 or a 6. And there were plenty of instances where I just got tons and tons of extra attacks, especially if you use that command ability and they get to attack twice. It's really fun and really good. So the Mortis engine ended up killing the chariot, which I was kind of surprised. These chariots are pretty good. I thought when I first read the rules, I was thinking that the Exalted, for instance, when the regular Seeker Chariot charges in, you roll dice for every model within 1 inch and enemy model within 1 inch. On a 4-up, they take it with mortal wound. And the Exalted Seeker Chariot, because it's bigger and more powerful, it does a D3 mortal wounds to any, with the exact same profile. So any model within 1 inch you roll, and if it's a 4 or higher, it does D3. And I thought that went into the unit, but it's model specific, so it's good against like a unit of knights or something like that. But if you're just up against a bunch of horde or something, it's not that great. Or well, it's still good, but not as good as it would be. So I was surprised that the Mortis engine would kill the chariot, and the Vargolf and the cavalry I have over there inflicted wounds on each other. They kind of went back and forth. The Vargolf took I think 3 or 4 wounds, and a couple of my models were killed. And then the next turn, the combat just really continued for quite some time. So I think I got to go the next turn after that. And on turn 3, more of my units made into combat, and they just kind of went to work, just massacring as many of the models as they can. The Demon Prince went up against the Vampire, and I was expecting him to do somewhat decent, but he actually got his ass kicked and took a bunch of wounds without doing anything in return. Which was kind of not too good, and kind of I wasn't too happy with that. So then we went to the Vampire Count's turn, and I guess before we got to the Vampire Count's at this point, we went down and had our Thanksgiving dinner, which was fun. And we didn't actually get back to the battle. We had a little bit too much wine, and we were just more wanted to relax a bit downstairs, or my wife did at least. And so we didn't get back to the game quite yet. And we took it up a couple days later. It's kind of one of the perks of having a hobby room that's kind of in and out of the way. You can just have the board up and keep it going over a number of days. So on the Vampire Count's turn, the Mortis engine unleashed it can kind of use this like effect that hurts everyone within a random range. It can do it once per battle, and so it used that ability, and that does it heals all the undead units in that range, and it does D3 mortal wounds to every mortal or every enemy unit within that range. Um, I think like on average you might get like 12 to 13 kind of inches or so. Um, and she rolled like the maximum would be and the maximum you could get would be 24 inches, and I think she got like 18 or something. So she rolled really high, and it affected pretty much everything in my army, or at least on that area of the board. And so it put 3 wounds on the mask, which at that point hadn't taken any wounds. It put 3 wounds on the fiends, and that killed off. Well, no, I don't think that did kill off one. It did kill the herald in the tower, which was kind of humiliating. It killed out the demon prince, which is really humiliating. And it just kind of caused a bunch of wounds elsewhere. So that, I don't know, like I think that on most games that's like a mediocre ability. This one it really rocked. Um, and then that took place to the hero phase, and so the vampire count lords then raised 2 units of Graveguard, and the necromancer cast arcane bolt on the exalted chariot. So then the vampire lord ran in, charged into combat, and she killed off the mask. My demonettes on the other side finished off the black coach and a couple of the skeletons, but then they just got completely overwhelmed by a horde of attacks from the skeletons. As happened in my previous game, my opinion of skeletons really goes back and forth between mediocre to like ungodly killing machines. I think next time we're going to try using like a massive horde of skeletons and just see what really happens, because they can get 3 attacks base if the unit's large enough, and if you put Blood Feast and all the other stuff on there, those things will just kill anything. And they're just skeletons, so if a bunch of them die, I mean, you need to wipe out the unit effectively to get rid of them, because every turn they regenerate. So I lost that unit of demonettes. Again, like that unit of skeletons had the vampire count command ability Blood Feast on them. That gives them an extra attack. It's a really good ability. And then the Seekers, they were charged by the skeletons in that phase, and they turned and attacked the skeletons. They inflicted a number of casualties. And one of my fiends was killed by the Black Knights, and I took a bunch of casualties kind of everywhere. And so at the end of the turn, we rolled to see if the game would continue, and she rolled a 4, which means it ended on the end of the 3rd turn. You can see here my demonette unit was still in the tower, still in control. And, her army was just a little bit too spread out to really kind of deal with this scenario. I think if she played it again, she would, deploy it a bit differently. An interesting game, though. The randomness of the game adds kind of a certain flavor to it, because, quite frankly, had it gone right down to like the very last model, I think she probably would have pulled it off and won in that regard. I had taken losing that whole unit of demonettes and losing most of my cavalry on the other side, and a bunch of my fiends and the mask and the herald. Things kind of turned pretty badly towards the end for me, but I ended up winning the game, and that's the name of the scenario. So we both learned some lessons, and we'll be trying out some other scenarios in future games. I'll try to use a bit more pictures like I did last time in future games. So I appreciate the views, guys, and have a good one. Bye.